Hi everyone, my name is Matthew Moser and I'm a software engineer at Itemus. This is the third part of the Tara process series. If you missed the other two, they will be linked in the video description below. I highly recommend watching both videos before this one, as the Tara is a step-by-step process. But anyways, in this video we'll be going over the threat analysis portion of the Tara process and how to perform that within the Security Analyst tool. So here we are in the Security Analyst tool. And we can see here the project that we've been working on, the MyTara project with our ECU and interface panel. We have gone ahead and completed the damage scenario and understand the impact rating of the different damage scenarios that we created. And now we need to start doing the third step, which is the actual threat analysis. This is the most in-depth step of the Tara process, so it's important to make sure that you know everything about it before you start going into it. And we'll go ahead and get started here. So in order to start this process, we're going to be opening the assistant and going to our threat scenario identification assistant. Go ahead and give it a refresh so that it finds all the components that we have. So what this is doing is it's taking all the facets from our item definition and comparing it to threat classes that are stored within our threat class catalog. We have another video going over the threat class catalog configuration, so I would look into that if you're looking for more specifics on that. But if you just want to know the general location, it's within the threat classes section of the catalog for ISO 21434 solution. So what this is doing is we're now looking at all of the components here, and we're given the same accept or reject paradigm that we had for damage scenarios, but now it's applying over to threat scenarios. So we can go ahead and accept or reject as needed, and you can see here we still have the rationale spot for the things that are relevant. And for this, we'll just say that this threat is relevant. It creates a new threat. Holding control and left clicking that will take us over to the threat scenario security chunk. And we're able to start seeing some of the information that's already being filled here. We have the cause of the compromise being the threat class, and then what it's acting on being the ECU component. Now, something that we can do is we could link it over to a damage scenario that we currently have. In this case, I'll just link it over to damage scenario 1 because it's already there. Yes, and already we can see that this has been generated. We don't have an attack feasibility level or risk level yet because we haven't completed this step, but it is properly taking the impact level from the damage scenario and placing it here. Now, the next step is that we have to create our attack tree. And the way that your attack tree is going to look is going to vary depending on what sort of structure you're using for your threat class catalog. Be it stride, MITRE, or kill chains, it's all going to really depend on which one you're choosing. For the sake of this, we're going to keep this as just a stride-based system. So we need to actually create our attack tree for this specific instance. In order to do this, we're going to go to our security analysis section here and go to the attack step security chunk. Here is where we get to create all of our different attack steps. And we can go ahead and say that it is instantiating what type of threat. I'll just say that it's tampering, it's acting on the ECU, it threatens being a link over to what threat scenario. And we could say it's mitigated by certain types of controls, or if it's prepared by another attack. So if you wanted to say that this is step 2, and the first step is another attack that we have listed here, you could go ahead and select that. We don't get the option here, and in fact, if we say that it's AS1, we get an error cycle because we're saying that attack step 1 is prepared by attack step 1. It's a loop, it doesn't really make sense. Getting rid of that, we have no issue here. So now that we have this done, if this was, say, the only attack within our concern and the only steps that were needed to complete the attack, we could say that we're done here for this particular threat scenario. And in order to better show what's kind of happening in the background of this, we're going to go up here and we have this graph of elements and model function. What this does, I'll go ahead and change the sizing of this. That should be a little bit nicer. What's being done here is it's taking all the damage scenarios, threat scenarios, and attack steps and showing the linkage between all of them. So because with this Tara, we only have one damage scenario, one threat scenario, and one attack step, it's all being linked together. just because we have them linked as such. And this is a really good way to understand what's happening on the back end and if things logically make sense within your attack tree. This will get a lot more complicated the more actual threats that you're trying to analyze and the more attack steps that you have per type of attack. Go ahead and close this. We can also instantiate different types of controls if we're looking to have that. So we'll go ahead and create a control here within the control chunk. We can choose a different type of control class. For this instance, I'll say that symmetric encryption is going to be used. It's acting on the ECU. Nothing is a threat to it, and it does this to the feasibility. Yep, that's all good. We can go back over to the attack steps, controls. We can say that this control is mitigated by it, and while it's not actually affecting the overall attack feasibility level, in fact, it seems to be the same. We can actually look within our show graph model tool, and we can see that it is being considered. So we could say that, okay, well, maybe this control isn't very effective. We should actually look into something that we could do to mitigate that effect even more. Or if, for instance, we're looking at our controls here and we decide that actually the way that this is being rated is incorrect and we should actually make this a lot more difficult. The feasibility of this is a lot better than we initially anticipated. We can make some changes there, and then when we go back over to our threat scenario chunk, and let's go ahead and hit F5 for a refresh, we can see that it is lowering the feasibility of this type of attack, and it's actually giving us our risk level, which is the final step, but we'll go over that within the next video. But this is a really helpful feature of the tool. Additionally, we have what are called control scenarios, which are very, very helpful for comparing a multitude of different controls together in different control systems in a quantitative manner. So it's really helpful if you're looking at different use cases. Say you have two types of security options that you could implement within your system, one of which is theoretically more secure but is more expensive, and the other is theoretically less secure but is less expensive. You could actually understand what is the cost-benefit analysis of using one control system over another. And that would be something that's just as simple as including which controls are should be included within a control scenario, and we could go ahead and create another control scenario here. Obviously, this is going to function a lot better the more controls that you have actually placed within your system and you're actually using within it, but this is just a very simple example Tara that we're going through. I may have a upcoming video on how to best utilize and implement control scenarios into your Tara, if that's something that people would be interested in. But for now, this is good enough to demonstrate the functionality of it. And in fact, I have another Tara that I'll probably link towards the end of this section just to demonstrate what that value is. But this covers everything within the threat scenario. So we've done our threat analysis. We understand what the threat is in terms of relationship to the threat class, what it acts on. We have our attack tree, and we have controls now to lower the attack feasibility. So now that we're done, we can move on to step 4 of the Tara process. But first, I'll go ahead and take a quick cut, and I'll show a example that you could use a control scenario for. So here's the example I was talking about. We're looking at a single risk on an ECU, and we have 3 different control scenarios. One in which no controls are instantiated, so there's just no controls being considered when it comes to lowering the attack feasibility. One in which we're using security option A, the more expensive but more secure one, and security option B being the less expensive but less secure one. We're able to see that by using the more expensive option, we're able to lower the risk down to a 2. Now this might be where we're looking at, or it may be overkill in terms of what the acceptable amount of risk that we have here is. Or we might look at option B, which is the less expensive but less secure one, and decide that actually we do need to spend the additional money because that 2 rating is something that we're really looking for, and it's a direct quantitative comparison between these 2 sets of controls. Going over to the control scenario here, I can show that we're just comparing 2 different encryption options to one another, and it's still pretty generalized, but it is how you would be able to use this in a real world situation, comparing different types of control systems quantitatively and directly to one another. So that's about going to end it up for the third video in this series. We'll be releasing the next one on part 4, which is determining the risk level, which is the final step of the Tara process, and generally the easiest because you've done all the work. Now you just get to understand what the sort of risk triage you have within your system. So thank you, and I will see you all in the next video.